I'm 26, male, and for the past year or so, I've been living with my parents in the city. Sounds pretty standard, right? But it's not what you think. This wasn't a case of moving back home because I couldn't afford rent. In fact, I'm the one who bought the house. I pay the entire mortgage. And I cover all the groceries, bills, everything. My parents don't pay a dime. For context, my parents, Liz, 52, and Tom, 55, are both retired teachers. They had been living out in the country for years. But after they stopped working, they decided they wanted to move to the city. They said they were bored with the quiet life and wanted to be closer to more excitement. I figured, why not? I'm doing well financially as a software engineer. And the city has better job opportunities anyway. Plus, I wanted to help them out since they'd done a lot for me growing up. You know, normal family stuff. So, we moved into a nice 3-bedroom house in the city. I'm not talking about a mansion, but it's definitely a comfortable place. 3 bedrooms, a small backyard, and a big enough living room for everyone to hang out. Since I'm the one paying the mortgage, I made sure to claim the master bedroom. It has a walk-in closet and its own bathroom, which is a lifesaver because, honestly, sharing a bathroom isn't my idea of a good time. The second bedroom became my home office. I work from home about 80% of the time, so I set it up just the way I wanted. Dual monitors, an ergonomic chair, all the essentials. The third bedroom I left as a guest room, for visiting family or emergencies. Simple, functional setup. At first, everything was great. My parents were just happy to be in the city. We all settled into a pretty comfortable routine. They did their thing, gardening, watching TV, reading. I focused on my job, paid the bills, and kept the house running. I didn't mind paying for everything. I make 6 figures, and they only have their pensions. Plus, I genuinely believed, you don't charge family rent, right? Then came the turning point, and it all unraveled faster than I could have imagined. One morning at breakfast, my mom dropped a casual comment, like it was no big deal. You know, your brother Jake and Emma are thinking about moving to the city. They're not doing so well back home, and Emma's pregnant, so they could really use some help. At first, I didn't think much of it. Jake, 28, and Emma, 26, were the kind of couple who bounced from one unstable situation to the next. They weren't destitute, but they weren't exactly thriving either. Emma being pregnant added another layer to the conversation. But still, I thought, okay, maybe they'll move to the city and rent a small apartment. But that wasn't what my mom had in mind. A few days later, she sat me down, using that soft, innocent tone she always uses when delivering news. She said, "We've invited Jake and Emma to stay with us. Just for a little while, until they get on their feet." I should have seen it coming. But I didn't. I just nodded along, assuming, fine, whatever. They'll stay for a bit and then move out once they figure things out. What I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning of the chaos. My parents didn't exactly ask me if I was okay with Jake and Emma moving in. They just told me after the decision had already been made. I was still processing it when Jake and Emma showed up at our front door. Bags in hand, clearly ready to move in for the long haul. Right away, it was clear they had no timeline. They made themselves at home immediately. I was already feeling pressure because, again, I pay for everything, groceries, mortgage, utilities, you name it. Now, 2 more people were added to the load. And no one had even asked me if I was okay with it. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother. But Jake's not exactly reliable. He's the kind of guy who always lands in messy situations and expects others to bail him out. Emma is nice enough, but there's this entitled attitude that just rubs me the wrong way. Like, because she's pregnant, she automatically deserves special treatment from everyone. Within a couple of days, Emma started making little comments, the kind that seem innocent but are really just planting seeds. "This place is so big. It must be hard for you to clean it all by yourself. Or, when the baby gets here, we'll need lots of space for all the stuff." I didn't think much of it at first. But then, one evening, after a long day of work, Jake and Emma asked to talk. I thought maybe, just maybe, they were going to apologize for eating all the food or taking over the living room. Nope. Emma, all casual, goes, "So, we've been thinking, it would make more sense for us to take the master bedroom." I just stared at her. Jake added, "The baby's going to need space. Your room has the walk-in closet and private bathroom. And there it was. The moment the air changed. I pay for the entire mortgage. The house is in my name. I fund every grocery trip, every utility bill, and every single thing that keeps this house running. And now they wanted me to give up my own bedroom. After that awkward conversation where Jake and Emma asked me to give up my room, I thought maybe they'd realize how absurd their request was and back off. I mean, who asks the person who pays the mortgage and all the bills to just hand over their private space, especially when they've contributed nothing? But, of course, that's not what happened. Over the next few days, I noticed little things. Jake and Emma were acting way too comfortable. Their stuff was suddenly all over the living room. Shoes by the couch. Emma's bags stacked near the hall closet. She was already talking out loud about where the baby's things would go: crib, stroller, changing table, as if the entire house belonged to her. Like they had staked a claim and were just waiting for me to move out of their way. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I was trying to hold it together, trying to avoid more drama. But inside, the resentment was building fast. I had made the mistake of being quiet once. I wasn't going to do it again. Then came the tipping point. One morning, I had to go into the office for a few hours. Normally, I work from home, but I had meetings that couldn't be done remotely. Nothing out of the ordinary. I left around 8 a.m. and came back just before noon, planning to grab some lunch and log in for the rest of the workday. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew something was wrong. There was a pile of my clothes in the hallway. My laptop monitor, unplugged, sat awkwardly on the floor. My noise-canceling headphones, still in their case, rested on top of a box marked MISC. My office chair had been dragged out of the room and leaned against the wall. I felt my pulse rise. I turned and headed straight for my bedroom. And there she was, Emma, standing in the middle of my room, folding up the last of my things like she owned the place. She didn't even look surprised when I walked in. "Oh, hey," she said casually. I was just finishing up. I stared at her. "What the hell are you doing?" Still calm, still too confident, she replied, "Your mom said we could start moving our stuff in here. The baby's coming soon. We need the space." I could feel the blood pounding in my ears. "My mom?" I repeated. This is the same mom who doesn't pay for the house, who has no legal or financial claim over this place, my place, and she told them they could just take my room. I wasn't about to let that go. "No," I said, stepping farther into the room. "You're not moving in here. I already told both of you. Take the guest room." Emma's arms crossed, and she looked at me like I was the one being ridiculous. "That room doesn't have a closet," she argued, "and it's too small for a baby." "I don't care," I shot back. "You're not taking my room. This house is in my name. I pay every bill. You and Jake don't contribute anything. If you need more space, you're welcome to find your own place." She glared at me, offended, as if I had just insulted her instead of defending the space I paid for. Then she dropped the same line again, like it was supposed to carry weight. "Your mom said it was fine." That was it for me. I stormed out of the room, grabbed my phone, and called my mom. She wasn't home at the time, which made it worse. She had authorized this while I was gone. She answered. "Hey, honey." I cut her off. "Did you tell Jake and Emma they could move into my room?" There was a pause. Too long. Then she said, "Well, I thought it would be the best solution. They need the space, and you already have the office. It's not like you're using the room for much." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious right now?" I snapped. "I pay the mortgage. I buy the groceries. I cover every single expense in this house. And you think it's okay to just give away my bedroom like I don't exist?" She tried to calm me down with the usual, "It's not a big deal. We're all family." But I wasn't listening anymore. If they don't move their stuff out today, they'll need to find another place to stay. Apparently, Emma had overheard me on the phone. She came storming out of the room, furious. "You're seriously going to throw us out? With a baby on the way?" That's when Jake arrived, probably heard the shouting from outside. He came in, looking angry and defensive. "What's going on?" he demanded. I looked right at him. "Your wife thinks she can just take over my bedroom. That's what's going on. And I'm telling you both, it's not happening." Jake stared at me like I'd betrayed him. "We're family. You should be willing to make sacrifices." "Sacrifices?" I shouted. "I've already made sacrifices. I pay for this entire house while you contribute nothing." The yelling escalated. No one was backing down. My mom tried calling again, but I ignored her. Jake kept whining about how unfair I was being. And Emma looked like she was ready to cry, again. But I'd had enough. You have until the end of the day to move your stuff out of my room. If you don't, I'll move it for you. Emma stormed off and slammed the door. Jake just stood there, glaring at me. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to be bullied in my own house, not anymore. After that explosive confrontation with Jake and Emma, I hoped, just maybe, that they'd get the message. I'd been crystal clear. My room was off limits. They could either stay in the guest room or find somewhere else to go. It seemed like a simple, fair boundary. I was already paying for everything. The least they could do was respect my space. But, of course, nothing is ever that easy. The next day, I tried to keep to myself. I stayed mostly in my home office, working and avoiding interaction. Honestly, I was still fuming. The level of entitlement I'd seen from both of them, and my own mother, was infuriating. I didn't want another fight. But I wasn't going to let things slide either. By the time dinner rolled around, the tension in the house was thick. No one was talking. Everyone moved around like they were walking on eggshells, pretending nothing had happened. That silence was louder than yelling. I didn't mind the quiet. I actually welcomed it. But then something pushed me over the edge. I walked into the kitchen around 6 p.m. to make myself some food. I had done the usual grocery run a couple of days earlier. And the fridge had been fully stocked. Now, it looked like a ghost town. Almost everything I had bought was gone. Snacks, leftovers, even the frozen meals I kept for emergencies, completely wiped out. I checked the pantry. Same story. It was obvious Jake and Emma had helped themselves. Again, I was already irritated, but I figured I'd just pick up more groceries tomorrow. Then came the real insult. My mom entered the kitchen with a stack of plates. She didn't make eye contact. She quietly started serving food, for herself, for my dad, for Jake, and for Emma. She made 4 plates and set them on the table. Then she sat down. She didn't make a plate for me. At first, I thought she must have forgotten. I waited a few seconds, expecting her to turn around and ask what I wanted. But she never did. She just sat down and started eating like I wasn't even there. My dad didn't say a word. Jake and Emma were already digging in, looking smug. Emma even smirked at me. That was it. You didn't make me a plate, I said, trying to stay calm. My mom finally looked at me. Expression flat. You don't want to help the family. You don't eat with the family. I stood there frozen. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman, who lives in the house I pay for, eats the food I buy, contributes nothing financially, was now icing me out of my own kitchen because I wouldn't give up my bedroom? I slammed the fridge door shut and stormed out of the room. I was done playing nice. I wasn't going to be treated like some outsider in the house I completely paid for. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, then it was time to stop treating them like welcome guests. I went to my room, pulled out my laptop, and started preparing eviction paperwork. I wasn't bluffing anymore. I had warned them. Now it was time to follow through. Within an hour, I had everything printed. I prepared 2 sets of notices, one for Jake and Emma, giving them 24 hours to leave, and another for my parents, giving them 30 days to vacate unless they agreed to change their behavior and respect my space. It felt strange, but necessary. Once the documents were ready, I walked back into the living room where everyone was sitting, pretending like nothing had happened. No one looked at me as I approached. I didn't say a word. I simply dropped the papers on the table in front of them. Jake picked his up first and scanned it, his face draining of color. "What is this?" he asked. "You have 24 hours to pack your things and leave," I said calmly. "If you're not out by tomorrow, I'll call the police." Jake looked stunned. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm serious," I replied. "You've been freeloading here without contributing a thing. Now you want to take over my bedroom and disrespect my boundaries?" "No more." Jake stood up fast, fists clenched. He tried to stare me down. But I didn't flinch. "We're family," he growled. "You can't just throw us out." "Yes, I can," I said, stepping closer. "This is my house. I pay the mortgage. Not you, not Emma, not mom or dad. If you can't respect me, then you don't get to stay here." Emma, of course, started crying. "I'm pregnant. You're kicking out your own brother and his pregnant wife? I'm the brother who's been paying every single bill while you both take advantage of me." I said coldly. "You have 24 hours. That's more than fair." Jake looked like he wanted to argue more. But the realization was sinking in, I wasn't bluffing. My mom, who had stayed silent up until now, finally spoke. "You can't do this, honey. They're your brother and sister-in-law. This is family." "I've already done it," I said, pointing to the notice. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else. Unless things change completely." The room fell silent. My dad just sat there, staring down at his plate. My mom looked like she might cry. But I didn't care anymore. This wasn't about being mean. This was about standing up for myself. They had pushed me too far. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and locked it behind me. Then I sat down and took a long, deep breath. I'd just done something I never thought I would have to do, evict my own family. But it felt right. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I had control again. After handing out those eviction notices, I expected the tension in the house to explode. But instead, things got eerily quiet. It was the kind of silence that didn't bring peace, just anticipation. I knew I had drawn a line in the sand. There was no going back. Either they would take me seriously, or the next step would be calling the police. I meant every word. The morning after, I woke up early, earlier than usual. Sleep had been hard to come by. But it wasn't anger keeping me up anymore. It was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had taken back control of my life. Still, I didn't know what would happen next. Would Jake come banging on my door? Would my parents try to guilt trip me into changing my mind? But none of that happened. When I walked into the kitchen, it was empty. No Jake, no Emma, no parents. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they had packed their things overnight and left quietly. But I knew that was wishful thinking. I made coffee and sat down, waiting. I didn't want an argument. I wasn't in the mood for another lecture on family. I just wanted peace and respect. A while later, my mom entered the kitchen. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept at all. She didn't speak right away. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat across from me. It was the first time we'd been alone since I handed her the eviction notice. The silence stretched. Finally, she said softly, "Honey, I know things have gotten out of hand." I didn't reply. I just stared at my coffee, waiting. I expected an apology, or at least an explanation. "I didn't realize how bad things had gotten between you and your brother," she said, her voice cracking. "We were just trying to help them. I guess I didn't see how unfair it was to you." That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting her to admit fault, not this quickly. For a second, I thought maybe she was finally beginning to understand that I wasn't the villain in all of this. But the frustration inside me was still fresh. "You didn't just ignore how I felt," I said. "You took their side. Every time. You assumed I'd roll over like always and just let them take whatever they wanted." She looked down. "I know. But we thought. You've always been the strong one. Jake's never had it easy." That line again. Jake has never had it easy. That excuse had followed me around my whole life. "And you think I've had it easy?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "I'm the one who bought this house. I'm the one who pays for everything. I've carried this whole family for over a year, and you think that just keeps going?" She nodded slowly. "I know you've done more than we could have asked for. But with the baby coming." I cut her off. "This isn't about the baby. This is about respect, and none of you have shown me any." She sighed and leaned back, clearly exhausted by the weight of it all. "We thought we were doing the right thing," she said after a moment. "Jake and Emma, they don't have much. And whose fault is that?" I shot back. "I didn't invite them here. I didn't ask for any of this. You brought them in and made decisions without even talking to me. Then you tried to hand over my bedroom like I didn't exist." She nodded again, more slowly this time, like the reality was finally sinking in. "We'll figure something out," she said quietly. "But please don't push us out. Not like this." I leaned back in my chair, breathing deep. I didn't want to kick my parents out. But I also couldn't keep living like this, being treated like my boundaries and needs didn't matter. "I don't want you and Dad to leave," I said, "but something has to change. If it doesn't, then yeah, you'll need to find somewhere else to live." She didn't argue. She just nodded again. "Okay," she said, "we'll figure it out." That afternoon, Jake finally appeared. He walked into the living room without a word, sat across from me, and gave me the same angry glare he'd worn for days. "So this is how it's gonna be?" he asked. "You're really kicking us out?" "I gave you 24 hours. I said, not even looking up from my phone. "I told you what needed to happen." He shook his head, scoffing. "We're family." "Yeah, I replied. And family doesn't take advantage of each other. He didn't say much after that. Just sat there for a minute. Jaw clenched. Then stood and walked away. Typical Jake. When things didn't go his way, he ran. This time was no different. Later that day, they started packing. I stayed in my room, not wanting to hear Emma's crying or Jake's muttering. By late afternoon, they were gone. I didn't see them leave. And I didn't want to. I wasn't looking for a teary goodbye or a last-minute guilt trip. The house felt lighter, calmer. That evening, my mom knocked on my door. She came in quietly and sat on the edge of my bed. "They're gone," she said. I nodded. "I never thought it would get this far." She admitted. "We didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you." I looked at her, finally feeling some of the anger melt away. "It's not that I didn't want to help," I said, "but you treated me like I didn't matter in my own home." "You're right," she whispered. "Things will be different, I promise." And for the first time in weeks, I believed her. The tension was gone. My space was mine again. And most importantly, I had my respect back.